welcome to a very special interview show of The Prode. Today we are here once again with another in-depth analysis of the ongoing Russia-Ukraine crisis, and today we are joined by a very special guest from the United States, Dr. Tatsiana Kulakevich. Dr. Tatsiana is a researcher who was born and raised in Belarus. She's a permanent instructor in research methods and quantitative analysis at the University of South Florida School of Interdisciplinary Global Studies. Her analysis appeared in various media and academic journals, including the Washington Post, The Conversation, The Globe Post, The New Eastern Europe, International Migration, SAIS Review, Journal of Belarusian Studies, and East European Politics and Societies and Cultures. She's a renowned geopolitical expert and a commentator on international relations. Thank you so much, Professor, for your time. A very warm welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I would like to begin the discussion by asking that how do you see the Russian claims of capturing the Mariupol city of Ukraine, and what is your overall assessment of the recent developments of the war to start with?
Well, I would not say the city was captured yet. The majority is under occupation, but Ukrainian soldiers are still fighting. And more specifically, a lot of people, civilians, are still hiding in Azovstal factory there, and they are not giving up. This factory has been being bombed for days, but there are a lot of spaces in this factory to hide, and they will be fighting till all of them will die. That's how what I hear, and that's how Ukrainians actually do fight in this war. So, but we need to remember that the city of Mariupol is located very close, very far inside the occupation. It's very, very deep inside of where Russian forces are right now located. That's why Ukrainian forces having a difficult time to provide assistance, and are doing all they can to organize humanitarian corridors, which have been failing greatly because Russian side is not willing to open them.
Yeah. So now coming to the Butcher Massacre. So we all know that how deadly was the Butcher Massacre. So what is your assessment of the same? Do you think that Russia is actually behind it? Because many experts from China and Russia says that it's not Russia behind this whole thing.
Yes. So Butcher actually served as a critical point in this conflict, military conflict, which is war. According to the correlates of war, for the military conflict to be called the war, there should be 1,000 deaths. People died in the military conflict, so it is war. So it isn't correct to call it as a special military operation, as Russian official TV is portraying it. So Russian TV has been spreading a lot of different propaganda. They were already caught in lies in many instances. For example, even today, the most recent ones, they declared that they will open humanitarian corridors. They will not interfere with people leaving, civilians leaving the bombed area. But that's actually not true. And a lot of leaders were talking to Vladimir Putin, and he promised a lot of things, and he has not delivered. So whatever they are saying should be questioned, because of a lot of they set precedent for being questioned. And we've seen we are living in the globalized world, where we have a lot of information, independent information, like we can access pictures that are online, and people are taking pictures a lot, and a lot of experts traveled to Bucha already to document the deaths And before this war started, these people were living in a peaceful way, and there was no need to kill anyone. So why would they kill their own people in such numbers? That's a question we should be asking, and it was not in interest of the Ukrainian officials and Ukrainian government to kill people, to just kill them, to create fakes, as Russian TV is showing. So I say it is evident to me that Russian forces are behind it, and this is a very indicative moment in this war. It changed a lot of attitudes by the West, and maybe you have another question about that.
Yeah, indeed, it was a horrifying, incident. So, Professor, could you please take us to the historical background of this whole conflict? Like, what made Russia so obsessed about Ukraine, and what, according to you, is the root cause of this whole conflict?
Well, it's not we should not say that this conflict is new, because the western portion of Ukraine has been fighting war since 2014. So they have been fighting war for 8 years already. So, but even further away, Ukraine is a former Soviet republic, same as many other republics. There were 15 republics in the Soviet Union. So, the country declared independence after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and had close ties to Russia. And the country actually was divided into Eastern and Western Ukraine, with different views on what their culture and language they should speak. The eastern portion of Ukraine was closer to Russia and leaning towards Russia, and the western portion of Ukraine was speaking Ukrainian and was leaning more European ways. And when the conflict in 2014 began, the war started, it changed. It was a critical juncture after which Ukraine was actually united. So in November 2021, very recently, a few months ago only, there was a poll showing that over 80% of Ukrainians actually have negative views of Vladimir Putin. So, and if people knew about that, those who knew about that, they could expect that Ukrainian people will be defending their own territory, because they are not divided anymore. They were united against the aggressor who started the war. And now we see this resolve and interest in protecting their own land, while Russia wants to kind of project its sphere or protect its sphere of influence. It doesn't want Ukraine to lean west, and it wants to control it. And here that's why we hear all these declarations that Ukraine should not be Ukraine. It does not. It should not exist as a separate nation. Or they are kind of very close to Russians, and they should be close to Russian culture, while Ukrainians actually do not believe that, and Soviet Union collapsed a long time ago, and different new generations grew up there. And that's basically the story. And if those who did not put this variable of Ukrainians believing that they are Ukrainians and they need to be, and they will be protecting their territory, that's where the miscalculation came that we see right now.
Yeah, Professor, Russia claims that the expansion of NATO is the primary reason behind this invasion of Ukraine. So do you think that is it correct on moral grounds to attack a country and its civilians just to uphold the principle of indivisible security? And how do you see this whole indivisible security principle as an idea?
I would say that, yes, there was this declaration that we don't want Ukraine to join NATO, but realistically, it was not in the cards for Ukraine to join NATO immediately right now, to invade it, just because or based on these declarations that we don't want them to join NATO, because it was not even in the cards. Ukraine was just leaning European way. They want different values. They want different. They have different views, and it was based more. It was more. Russian government does believe they don't want NATO to expand, but it was one of the, how to call it, one of the explanations, which the more important one is that they just wanted to keep Ukraine in its sphere of influence under any pretext. And the cards were kind of, the history went the way where Putin could plan that invasion, and Belarus actually is a neighboring to the Ukraine, actually played the role there. Not Belarusian people, I should say, Belarusian government that could balance. Before the mass protests in 2020, there were biggest protests against the presidential elections in Belarus after the collapse of the Soviet Union, where people poured to the streets in large, massive numbers. And the government, Lukashenko, with help of Russia, was able to unleash a brutal crackdown on these people and stay in power. But Belarusian people woke up, and an opposition leader, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, who is now in Lithuania, in Vilnius, basically closed the door for Lukashenko to balance between East and West. And Lukashenko didn't have a chance now, but allow Putin and provide the territory and get under his control. And that's how Belarus served as a platform and allowed for missiles to be shot from the Belarusian territory, and basically expand the territory for invasion. So that was one explanation why this invasion happened now, because history dictated as well, and they didn't want Ukraine to go anywhere. They have Belarus to invade from, and NATO is always was in the talks. It's not a new pretext, not new excuse, and that's what we see. But the NATO, you asked the question about the resolve, the Article 5, I believe that if a NATO member is invaded,
yeah,
they will protect each other, right?
Yeah.
So that's actually played their role. I would say a little bit in a negative way, because NATO was always talking about, if NATO country NATO member is invaded, then everybody will be protecting it. But Ukraine is not NATO member. And the fact that NATO countries were talking about that more was kind of, you can explain it as a way to encourage actually Russia to invade Ukraine, because they said clearly that they will not be protecting it because it is not a NATO member, even though they said that we will be helping, still not the same.
Yeah, coming to this question, like what are some of the major reasons behind the fact that US and other countries have decided not to send their military to help Ukraine?
Yes, because Ukraine is not a NATO country, and they are not obligated. They are actually not obligated even under Article 5, because every country can decide. They need to decide together that there was actually, the offense against a NATO country. So it's also not straightforward, Article 5. It's very important because it does protect. That's why countries want to be NATO members. But for Ukraine, it didn't matter. It's not a NATO member. It was actually criticized. All the speeches by NATO saying that NATO will not put troops on the territory of Ukraine. was actually going into Russia's, ally, kind of saying, yeah, why? We will be going there. They will not go in anyway. So Ukraine will have to protect itself if it can.
Yeah. So now coming, do you think that on moral grounds, the US and the other countries like UK and the European Union should send their military to help Ukraine on moral grounds? I'm not talking about the rules and articles of NATO.
Okay, so this moral grounds is not politics. So whatever me and you think, it's not how it works. Each country has its own national interest. And in democracies, it's a lot of bureaucracy as well, because there's a lot of voting going into the process. That's why the new land lease in the United States, possibly going to be voted this week, would basically bypass all this bureaucracy, helping with the arms. But moral grounds is not what's at play, even though every person would say on moral grounds, Ukraine should have won already with all the possible arms and all possible help provided. But it's more about kind of strategy, thinking, interest, and that's politics. Yeah, it's not moral ground. Yeah.
Coming to the geopolitical impact of the war on the neighbors of Russia. So do you think that nations like Finland should join NATO after seeing what happened in Ukraine, because they have had a proposal on joining NATO? We also heard that Russia has threatened Finland with nukes if they will join NATO. So how do you see this whole Finland-Russia thing coming up?
Yeah, so yeah, and that's one of these what Ukrainian conflict is doing. It did so much already. I would say I was thinking about that, and you can actually compare what happened in Ukraine with the literally work picture of Dorian Gray, when he had a picture that portrayed all the ugliness possible. And that's what I think that what kind of highlighted all this conflict, highlighted so much that was going on under the covers, and the West is looking and kind of highlighting, everything is highlighted. So in terms of Finland and Sweden, this was already called as a miscalculation by Putin. These countries will join NATO. They are not afraid, and especially this we can talk about that. We could have talked about that a few weeks ago, but recently there was an interview by Victoria Nuland, Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs, United States. She said if Ukraine would be if Russia will use nuclear weapons against Ukraine, the West and the United States will respond. So it's different from what we just discussed with Article 5, when they said we will not send troops. They will still not send troops, as they repeatedly said, but they said that we will involve if the nuclear weapons are used. So it also can be transferred to Finland and Sweden, which also secures them and deters Russia from using nuclear weapons, because they were clearly told that will have consequences immediately, because that threatens more than Ukraine here. More is at stake. And the West is now believes already that Ukraine can win, and Sweden and Finland and other countries can see it, and they see benefits joining NATO, and they will join it.
Yeah. Even after so many days, we have seen that Russia has not been successful to capture, the whole of Ukraine. Not forget about whole of the Ukraine, but the major cities of Ukraine as well. So, what, according to you, is the reason behind this, that Russia has failed in, in its invasion?
So we saw that Russia removed the troops from the Kyiv region, and that's how we saw Butcher. That's because they started leaving that territories. So that shows the miscalculation by Vladimir Putin to go and invade Ukraine in so many places.
Yeah,
That
even I want to add that he has changed his army generals also, but still, Russia is failing even after changing the generals and other army people.
Yes, they changed the generals. They put Dvornikov, his last name, in charge after Bucha. There are different reasons for that. This guy is known as the Butcher. That's his nickname because he was doing all this bad stuff in Syria. One of the explanations is because Russian soldiers already saw that they don't know what they are fighting for, while Ukrainians are protecting their land. So Ukrainians they know and they want to fight, while Russians basically counted for quick victory, and now they have to go and die for they don't know what exactly. Only the belief that they are fighting, something that's not there. And there are news about sabotage, not in a way that they stop believing that Ukrainians should not exist, but they see strategically that they can die. So they go and they kind of don't want to die and report to their superiors that they couldn't achieve much. So, but Dvornikov is there to push them into the ground order to go without thinking about human lives, because that's what he is known for. But the withdrawal of the troops in the north, in the Kyiv region, is because Russian government saw that it would not be possible to organize offensive from so many places. So they went back to the east where they started, and they're trying to create this land bridge, the connecting the Crimea by land. Now they have a bridge over the water. Now they want land bridge, but at the same time, Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, already said if Russians will get Mariupol, or and kill all the Ukrainian defenders, they are leaving the peace talks, which were not effective so far. That also indicates the fact that they're expecting, they feel stronger. They are receiving arms, and the West is showing more and more support, also believing that Ukraine can win, and hopefully they will.
Yeah, how do you rate the leadership of President Zelensky in, if we see the whole conflict going and his strategies and his executions of the whole conflict between Russia and Ukraine? So how do you rate his leadership?
Yeah, we could see Zelensky's character. And his character actually is one of the key things that actually, we could say, saved Ukraine, because he showed that he would be there with the defenders of Ukraine till last breath, even when he was offered to be transported outside of Kyiv. If he had agreed, that we would not have seen Ukraine. So he is kind of inspiration. And maybe you saw it already yourself, that the way he dresses, the beard, and his appearance was actually used by some leaders like Macron. The people were saying Macron was not shaving at one point because he wanted to look like Zelensky, while during his during the presidential campaign and election in France. So yes, and Ukrainians actually did not look great at Zelensky before this war. They were questioning his leadership and his ability to fight corruption in Ukraine, but he should not be looked at and how to call it, the attitudes towards him should not be based on the previous experiences, because this one is a critical, huge event and process where he did show that he cares and he will do everything for his country.
Yeah, coming to the Western sanctions, as we all know that US, UK, and other European countries have put so much sanctions on Russia. So, despite all those sanctions, Russia has been successful enough to do the military operation, and they are like not at all withdrawing their troops even after so much of sanctions. So, what according to you is the main reason behind this? Why is it so that despite all the sanctions, Russia is able to sustain?
Well, because the sanctions were not coming very fast. And from the very beginning, when Russian troops crossed the border of Ukraine, it was a Ukrainian territory after declaring independence of these two republics, the so-called republics, on February 24th, the response by the West was very, very weak. It was Russia didn't even notice, and maybe probably even laughed at that. And it took, right now we are 2 months into the war, and sanctions were coming. We've seen 6 packets of sanctions, and 6 or 5, I think 6, I don't remember.
Yeah.
So and you see that the first one didn't work, the second was weak, the third was doing something else, the fourth and fifth, and they are gradual. So the most recent one had just came not so long ago, and that's one thing, that they were gradual, they were kind of step by step, so small things after another, and we still seeing the next package is going to be focused on oil embargo, and that's very important. Energy sector should have been sanctions from the very beginning, and we are still working on it, because that's what Russia is making money from. And high prices on oil, that's where Russia earns the money, actually. And another thing is that sanctions, it takes time for sanctions to start working. So they will hit, but not immediately. So that's why Russia has time right now, even though the news are coming that people of Russia already are experiencing job losses, and prices for food are rising, and there are no parts for several productions, and the production chains are broken. Right now, it's been a few weeks already, people of Russia are discussing and telling that they don't have even paper to print on already. So the prices for paper, A4 paper, regular paper, grew up so much but still it's not enough. It's still time needed. And energy sector, unfortunately, European Union, I mean, they cannot give up gas easily, but they are trying, they are thinking about that, and it's already a big deal. Unfortunately, Ukraine is losing people while all this process is happening.
So we have seen that, European Union depends on Russia still for majority of its energy supply. So do you think that the time has come when European Union should stop its dependency on the Russian natural gases and Russian oil?
Oh, yes, I would say the time has come in 2014, I would say. And if you know that the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, that was stopped, and that was in the middle, at the center of the discussion, when Russia was building up its troops around Ukraine. That took time also. They started putting together the troops in October 2021, while invasion happened in February. That Nord Stream 2 pipeline, that was important for Russia, and important for the whole dynamics, the relationship. It was not even discussed all these months. So, and another thing is that it was started after the war in Eastern Ukraine in 2014, and that highlights, you know, the politics of Germany here, unfortunately, or maybe it is fortunately, because finally we can see and we can point it to the European Union countries that were, you know, doing business with Russia, closing their eyes on injustices and allowing Putin to feel impunity. And now we see, and they can see, that time has come. Unfortunately, they are so deep into the dependency that it will also take time to get out of it. So the first step is oil, the second step is gas, and hopefully faster, sooner than later.
Yeah, I would like to conclude the discussion by asking that what does the future holds in terms of this conflict, and what does the future hold for Ukraine? Do you think that Ukraine will be able to bounce back after this whole crisis?
Yes, so I want to say that this conflict, as I mentioned before, opened eyes of many people and of the West to look at itself, at different actions they took that they should not have been involved in. And it highlighted energy crisis, energy security, as we just discussed. And it already questions the effectiveness of United Nations as well. That's also, even though United Nations has been ineffective for some time now, this crisis actually highlighted
not just the Ukraine crisis, but also in the Afghanistan situation. We have seen that United Nations failed to manage these two crises.
I agree, not just these two. They were doing it for a long time, but at the same time, this one, what my point is that, I know they were not doing well before, but this one just drew attention to it, more attention to it. Then another one is humanitarian crisis, like when we see migration going into so many migrants in the European Union, they poured within fastest possible way, and in how many, 5 million people already in Europe left Ukraine, and 7 more displaced within the country. And that also raises an opportunity for the debate within the European Union on asylum and migration, and also drew attention to double standards with migration in European Union. So we see different aspects highlighted by this Ukrainian crisis, which in a way teaches countries to get better, maybe to improve. It is also nuclear kind of questions raises the military security, and we know that already this conflict already. So for the future, we already see that Vladimir Putin failed in his plans to occupy and suppress Ukraine as he planned within 3 days. We should be expecting more fighting in eastern Ukraine, while the West has already decided that they will be sending more and more arms. But again, it will take a little bit of time. Ukraine will be fighting, but it already won, I would say. It already won, but still the cost is not determined completely. I believe Ukraine will win, and hopefully sooner than later. And we will be looking how Russia resolves. Maybe Russian citizens will open their eyes, because a lot of them are under propaganda right now, unfortunately, as well. And how they're going to be dealing with their own government. It will be changing the order in Eastern Europe as well, not just between the West and East, but also within Eastern Europe, because Belarus is also involved, and Belarusian people also see a chance with this conflict. If Putin gets weaker, the Belarusian dictator Alexander Lukashenko may go, and if that happens, Belarus will become democracy. So it's a lot still to see, but I'm looking at it from a positive sign right now, because Ukraine already showed that they will fight, and people and the resolve of the West to support and visit. A lot of leaders visited Ukraine, and when yesterday the United States officials visited as well, they are showing its support, they're believing in it, and let's wish Ukraine victory sooner than later.
Yeah, may better sense prevail on all sides, and really hope the situation gets better soon in Ukraine. Thank you so much, Professor, for your time. It was a pleasure hosting you. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.